"Get him out of my house." That's what she yelled at the cops standing in my foyer, while I was still holding a mug of first morning coffee. And for a second, the officers actually looked at me, like maybe I'd wandered into the wrong home, which is wild, because I bought this place precisely because it's outside any HOA, and I checked that 3 times. Karen Whitaker had a manila folder and a page with my name that looked exactly like my signature. The same loopy E and the same tilt on the H, and I felt my stomach drop because even the cops weren't sure what to do. I remember thinking, yeah, this is how a quiet life turns into a story people argue about at barbecues. I'm Ethan Cole, software engineer by trade and list maker by nature. And after 10 years of saying no to shiny distractions, I paid cash for a small colonial on Sycamore Lane in Brookdale, Ohio. Fresh paint, a humming fridge, 2 cheerful gnomes under the maple like they'd just punched in for work, and one non-negotiable rule. I built my search around no HOA, not now, not ever. At 6:02 a.m. on day 1, there's a knock with that debt collector rhythm. I open the door and meet Karen, silver bob blazer in July. Clipboard, like it's part of her arm. "Welcome to Maple Ridge. Compliance starts today," she says, handing me a $500 violation for a mailbox that isn't even installed, and my brand new gnomes. And when I tell her my parcel isn't in Maple Ridge, she smiles like a teacher catching a kid cheating, taps the paper, and says I signed a boundary expansion into one. That's the moment doubt slid in under the door. Did I miss something in a stack of closing forms? Did I forget? But my hands were already moving, phone out, filming the corner stakes, reading the stamped numbers, pulling up county GIS. And on the map, the HOA polygon stopped 2 houses short of mine, like it hit a brick wall. She called the police from my grass and told dispatch I was trespassing on HOA property. Officer Daniel Brooks arrived with that end-of-shift patience you only get from years of sorting nonsense. He checked my deed and nodded, then looked at her, amendment, and said the line nobody likes to hear in their own foyer. I can't authenticate signatures in the field, so we were all stuck in a weird middle, where the truth was sitting in daylight and still needed permission to exist. My neighbor Miguel Alvarez, retired paralegal, paint on his shirt eyes that don't miss, said boundary expansions require notice and a vote. Asked her when that meeting happened, she said board action administrative, the kind of phrase people use when they want the room to stop thinking. Miguel invited me over with the tone of a guy who actually has tools. He still had a forensic scanner from his old cases, and we did it by the book. Gloves, timestamps, chain of custody photos. Then he ran my supposed signature against real ones from closing, and the heat map lit up like a summer storm. Stop-start pressure on the downstrokes. Ink timing that didn't match. This was traced, he said. Not dramatic, just the truth. You'd think I'd feel triumphant, but what I felt was clean anger, the kind that makes your hands steady, because somebody had studied my name and worn it like a mask. Karen didn't slow down. An HOA maintenance crew materialized on my lawn like a magic trick, slapping bright red hazard tags on the gnomes, while a guy read off municipal codes that sounded real until you listened. And I kept filming while he shoved a notice at me with a vendor number at the bottom that felt like a secret handshake. Inspector Aaron Lee rolled up in a white city sedan, walked the stakes, scanned the tags, checked the parcel on his tablet, then said, "The most satisfying plain sentence I've heard in a long time. These cited sections don't exist, and your lot is private." Non-HOA. He logged improper postings and referred the vendor code for review. And Karen hissed that we were conspiring against a vulnerable widow, while I stood there, thinking how fast vulnerable gets weaponized when someone wants power without proof. The twist started with a name whispered by a nurse at Sunset Grove Care Center, Henry Walker Karen's late husband, not late at all. And I drove over because there's a time you stop guessing and start counting. And in the garden, a thin man in a cardigan smiled at the word neighbor. Then leaned in and told me a woman visits, says she's his wife, makes him sign papers he doesn't understand. And you know what I mean? When I say the air changes when a truth like that lands, the whole day tilts. Karen showed up in oversized sunglasses like a spy with a matinee ticket. Saw my phone, sprinted across the patio screaming. I couldn't record. Staff stepped in. Security cameras watched everything. And for me, a line got crossed. I wasn't just a homeowner being pushed around, I was a witness to something uglier. After that, she staged a medical emergency in a grocery aisle. I mentioned the vendor codes. She clutched her chest, checked her watch, slid to the floor. The ER cleared her in half an hour. Then she filed for an emergency restraining order and painted me as a threat to her health, yeah. That happened, and while the order forced me to stay away, a moving truck idled at my curb, and her people carried furniture over my threshold like she owned the place. Miguel stood calm in my walkway. Mrs. Collins parked her walker like a traffic cone. Retired firefighter. Bill crossed his arms, and when Officer Brooks stepped into two competing narratives, and a row of phones pointed at the truth, he did the simplest, fairest thing. He told her to remove anything she'd moved in before the order expired, and the optics shifted, because there's nothing more clarifying than a crowd of ordinary neighbors refusing to be props in someone else's performance. That night, Miguel and I traced those vendor numbers to mailing invoices and USPS tracking logs, and a pattern I wish I could unsee. Fraudulent notices moving through the mail like little paper grenades. And we sent our packet to Postal Inspector Nina Patel, who called with a voice that does not do theater. We've seen similar patterns in other states. Keep your originals, export your metadata, and then. The ground under my feet moved again. When she told me a $2 million life policy in my name, forged signature, and all had just been filed naming Karen as beneficiary, fear didn't shout. After that, it whispered, because now I understood this wasn't about rules or lawn ornaments. It was a business plan, with a body count, and the body they were budgeting for was supposed to be mine. The hearing came fast. My attorney put our evidence on a clean 3-column timeline. Her claims are proof, the official record, and the projector blinked, then settled, showing the HOA map, stopping 2 houses short of my lot. Close-ups of stake caps with stamped numbers. Inspector Lee explaining the code sections. Don't exist, the forensic pressure map lighting up the tracing officer Brooks going through 6 calls in 2 weeks, where her statements didn't survive contact with reality. And then the quiet grocery clip of her checking her watch. Just before the dramatic collapse, the judge didn't look at me. He looked at the timestamp. They brought Henry in last, and the room went still. He squinted at Karen and said the words that broke whatever mask was left. That angry lady visits me. She makes me sign papers. My wife was kind. And Karen snapped. Get him out, lunged toward the aisle. The bailiff moved and the judge's ruling landed like a door closing gently but firmly. Restraining order, vacated clerk to refer for prosecution. I walked into pale afternoon light, already feeling the keel of my life settle, when Agent Patel arrived with 2 others, edge out a voice. Steadied Karen Whitaker. You're under arrest for mail fraud, insurance, fraud, and conspiracy. And Karen turned to me with that small, pleased line of a smile. Some people wear when they're losing one game and starting another. "This isn't over," she said. And the cuffs clicked, not loud, more like a metal whisper. And for the first time since a 6:02 a.m. knock, I didn't feel small in my own doorway. There's a version of this story where I pop champagne and my neighbors cheer. But if I'm honest, what I felt was steadiness, like a boat after a dumb storm. So I went home, unlocked my door, set the gnomes back under the maple, filmed the placement with date and time, like a person who won't let anyone narrate his life without receipts, and I sat on the step and let quiet do its job, because quiet is underrated. People keep asking what I would have done differently. I'd be less polite sooner. I'd start recording earlier. I'd tell the first officer on the first day that while he couldn't authenticate a signature in a driveway, common sense could. And I'd still put the gnomes out, because little kids wave at them and old ladies smile. And you don't surrender that kind of harmless joy to someone who only knows how to control. The twist you'll argue about is simple. Where's the line between community standards that make a block feel safe and control that turns rules into weapons? How fast do we pick victims and villains when someone shows up with a folder and a confident tone? How easily do we mistake performance for proof because I lived the answer on a small street in Ohio? And I can tell you this harmony without consent is just obedience in a mask. So tell me, do those cuffs mean it's actually over? Or do you think people who get power from performance always find a new stage? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where I was right, where I was wrong. And if your HOA has ever crossed from helpful to harmful, I want to hear your story. Like and subscribe. If this hit home, share it with the neighbor who swears their board is different, because maybe it is. Maybe it just hasn't met someone with a long memory and a camera yet.